With the Bitcoin dropping over 10% yesterday, is there more pain before the gains start to roll in? Guys, in this video, we're going to be diving down into Bitcoin once again, taking a look at a few things that are happening in the news, taking a look at Glassnode data, taking a look at the charts, and to see, what might actually happen next here with Bitcoin before we actually start to see a bit of a recovery to the upside, which I do anticipate is likely to occur at the beginning of 2022. Guys, as we get into this video, if you do find it useful and informative, then hit that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe? Tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. There's a link to our Discord server in the description down below. If you haven't yet joined us over there, do go ahead and check it out. You can talk to us directly on our Discord server, but also we do post the additional charts down there as well, so you get a bit of an idea of what's going on. Right, with all that said, done and out of the way, let's actually jump on down into the charts and take a look at what's going on here with Bitcoin. Okay, guys, so here we are on the hourly, okay, and obviously we can see that basically from 6 p.m. on the 12th through to the lows that we actually had down here on 7 p.m. So basically 25 hours, we had dropped 10%, okay, so 10.04%. Okay, so a very significant kind of pullback, right, for Bitcoin, specifically since it was looking for recovery. Now, what was really important about this was this big red line that you see on the chart just here. This is symbolizing that stochastic RSI, okay? We were down below it, okay? We had wicked down nice and low, and then we started to get this recovery. This was an absolutely key point for Bitcoin because it got the weekly closed candle above that Gaussian channel, okay? And I did anticipate that we were likely to come back into the Gaussian channel as we continue to see this volatility in the space, okay? Right, so this wasn't unsurprising. I think if you've been following the Bitcoin videos, you would have heard me say that my expectation was that we were going to go back into the Gaussian channel. That's exactly where we are right now, and we've got all week to get back out, which I do anticipate happening because I don't think the people who are influencing the price of Bitcoin, which we've been through previously, there seems to be control measures put in place on resistance levels and on support levels, kind of controlling the flow of where Bitcoin is going and what patterns Bitcoin is forming. Okay, so we kind of know what's been going on in the background with that regard, and I don't think their intention is to keep it inside the Gaussian channel on the weekly candles. Okay, I think they want to wick it down, shake out any paper hands, and then basically bring it back up for the weekly closing. Okay, so do check out the weekly closing videos or the Bitcoin manipulation video that I did, and that kind of explains kind of what's going on there. So we are right now in this kind of impulsive move down. We can see it's impulsive because of how rapidly it moved to the downside. Okay, we can have impulsive moves in both directions, and this basically in my mind is actually symbolizing an impulsive move, and I think we are still looking for a bit of a pullback as well with that fifth wave to the downside. Okay, this is kind of backed up again with that stochastic RSI being up in the overbought area. Now, obviously, this just because this is being kind of shown here doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to actually come into fruition. My expectation is we are going to pull down lower, but we've also already hit one of my key areas of support. This was 46k. This orange line just down here, as you can see, this is a previous area of support just up at this end, and actually it resonates really well over here as well, right? This is on that journey up. I think it was to 60. That's the left-hand shoulder high, right? So that's actually 52k, and so it resonated really well with that, and seemed to be a pretty interesting area to kind of find a bit of support. But with that being said, we are overbought and we should be looking to correct that stochastic RSI. Now, what we are going to do is take a look at these independently, right? We do have some interesting moves. Potentially, if I actually just expand this out a little bit, and we expand this to here, and we actually grab that 5 moves again, we can see that this would be wave 1, this being wave 2. Wave 3 potentially could have been here with a wave 4 high because there is a wick there, and then a pullback for wave 5. That could actually complete it. But then we are looking at this move. We could be looking for an ABC up, and we are waiting to bring in the B wave, right? But there's lots of wicks in these areas that are actually quite alarming to me. And again, we are still finding these very rounded numbers. This one here, for example, at 2100 hours last night, is showing us with $46,900 to the penny. And again, that's the high. It's basically a resistance blocker put on it. Up here, it's perfectly fine. It's free to kind of go in any direction. This one also is relatively free. And then we got a low high, right? So this point here is basically acting as a support. With to the penny $46,290. So you can see these just up in the top left hand corner. So again, this one here seems to have had support. So we had resistance put on this one, and then we had support put on this handle. Okay, so basically it's controlling where it is, and you've got these wicks, and you're basically just trading inside this box. Now, when we actually have rectangles, if I grab hold of my drawing tool here for a second, we can of course see that we're inside this kind of rectangular area, right? Although we have actually now just broken out of it, which is interesting in itself. If we draw this onto the bodies, we get some interesting kind of area of resistance and a breakout. Now, normally when you have a rectangle like this and you're trading, sideways, this is actually more of a continuation pattern, as in we're going down into it, we trade sideways, we go back down into it. So it's interesting that we actually have this break to the upside now. It's not usual we'd have that kind of scenario for a rectangle. Okay, so we can see that we had that there, and then obviously we've got the break. Now, still being overbought, this could just be an anomaly wick. And if we actually take a look at the free movement of the market here, we have a high that's capped on this particular candle at 47,050 to the penny. Okay, so we have that resistance blocker there, and then in the very next hour it broke through. So without actually going down into that smaller time frames, what was actually going on? Where was that resistance put? So there's a lot of resistance in all of these different areas here. Just trying to find the right one. Here's another one pulling back down. So basically there's highs being put on them. And it's interesting because obviously we can expect that there's going to be volatility here with Bitcoin. And if you're able to control the resistance and you're able to control the support, then basically you're going to be able to control the direction that the market goes in. So I'm not confident that this is the low point yet. I still think that there's a bigger play to be had here, whether we take a look at it on a 4-hourly chart instead, and we can say that this is our B wave rather than an impulsive move down. If I actually grab hold of those, delete those out. So on the 4-hourly chart here, other than this area in the middle, which we can measure, if we actually take that high point down to this point here, and then we actually go ahead and move this onto that high, we can see that we overextended, right? But did we overextend too much? And we take this again from the low up to the high, grab it, put it down onto top of that B wave high, and you can see we came down to exactly the 1.382, preventing it from being impulsive. Okay, so if we were to look at that from an ABC perspective, we'd have our A wave, probably just in here, and then our B wave high with a C wave low. Okay, overextending the usual, but not going impulsive because it did not pass that 1.382. Okay, so then obviously we look for that recovery, that bounce to the upside. Where does it actually go to? And for that, we'll go ahead and actually do the fib in the opposite direction. We'll take it from that to there, and we can see that we are looking to bounce up to the 618. This would be basically where that first wick actually went to. And we can see it here, and then we're pulling back down. Okay, so we're actually tracking quite nicely on the 50, but we would expect to actually push up to about 47,800 or so. And that could be something that we're looking for. And you can see on the 4-hourly, the stochastic RSI is oversold, right? On the 8-hourly, we're heading to that oversold area. On the daily, we're just coming out of the oversold area. On the weekly, we're oversold. So the only one that needs some minor correction is our hourly chart. So we're expecting some volatility on this hourly. Okay, if we actually come back into that 4-hour, you can see this actually tracking quite nicely to the upside. Okay, so come back into the hourly chart, we can see the ABC move, and we can track that nicely. So it's not impulsive. Okay, so on the hourly, when I had that kind of mapped out as an 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that looks like it is actually in line with the expectation. Whether you draw this with 5 waves, whether you draw it with an ABC, they both align quite nicely, and meaning that the downside is very limited at this point. But I'm not confident considering the kind of manipulation that's going on, but it is good to see that we have found good support on 46k, and we are pushing up to the upside nicely. But we'll watch out to see whether or not we're going to go down any lower. I know a lot of people in the space are calling out for 42k Bitcoin, so we will be watching out for that. Right now, looking at the 4-hourly, looking at the 8-hourly, looking at the daily, looking at the weekly, they're all indicating that we need to move up. But I don't think there's going to be a huge swing to the upside. Instead, what I would expect to happen is a push to the upside and then a correction to occur, taking us right back to where we started, just to kind of shake out anyone who might be investing or using leverage or anything like that. Okay, so one to watch out for, an interesting move that we had that 1.382 there. Now let's actually take a look at something more interesting. First of all, we're going to take a look at this, if I bring that back into the chart here. Okay, so Glassnode, and this is one of my favorite charts to kind of look at to understand, what's going on with Glassnode data around Bitcoin. Okay, and this here is basically Bitcoin's balance on exchanges, all exchanges. Okay. And this is as accurate as 1 day. So we have yesterday's data. So basically what we have here is I've limited this to showing us from January through to current. So basically the last 12 months. We can see that we started the year off relatively strongly, right? Kind of coming down into the low areas. And basically, by April and going into May, we started to see an increase with the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges. So it was nice and high, right? Now, what's interesting about this, obviously, is Bitcoin was going up to 65K. Bitcoin hit 65K. And then you start to see exchange balances of Bitcoin go up and the crash. Okay, you can kind of see that right here. Bitcoin crashing from 65K down to 28K. Bitcoin on exchanges was nice and high. And then Bitcoin on exchanges came down nice and low, right? And it still continues to go down low. And what you actually see is a little bit of volatility. There's a little bit of a push up, but it's absolutely tiny volume actually going back into exchanges versus, what had actually happened previously, right? And again, this is also confirmed when we actually take a look at the inflows from a total perspective as well, right? So yesterday was a little bit of a push to the upside. Again, on the 12th of December, it's the lowest it had been this year. Okay, so the inflows hadn't been as low as they had been, until, basically just a couple of days ago. Then obviously, when you're nice and low, you do have to expect that there is going to be an inflow into exchanges. Now, when we take a look at the outflows, what do we have? Well, the outflows were also very, very high. Okay, so although there were inflows, there were also outflows. Outflows had dropped down, and now outflows had picked up again. Okay, but when you actually take a look at it from the balance point of view, this actually looks in more of an interesting kind of perspective. It shows you the balance of Bitcoin on exchanges. Now, this is looking pretty low for the year, right? But actually, if we zoom out all the way into 2020, what does that look like? Well, it hasn't been this low for a very long time, right? Basically, taking a look at it from 2020 here, January of 2020, it was really high. All the way down, okay, into 2020, the Bitcoin on the exchanges, the balances on the exchanges was decreasing. We had the blip in May. And then obviously we continue to decrease, right? So you start thinking, wow, okay, we haven't been this low in a couple of years. What about 2019? Maybe just expand this back up. And we take a look at 2019. Nope, still haven't been as low as this, which is really it's an interesting kind of tell. You don't, in fact, actually get as low as we have been recently until 2018, okay? And this is really interesting. So when we actually come down into this point, this was basically August of 2018. We haven't been this low on exchanges with Bitcoin since 2018, August of 2018. Okay, and basically this is after Bitcoin had reached its all-time high and was actually starting to decrease in value as Bitcoin was loading up onto exchanges. Okay, so right now we're actually going in the opposite direction. What if we expand this out into 2017? Okay, so basically in 2017, as things would be in mind, we can see that basically, the Bitcoin on exchanges was going up, but there were some huge pullbacks, okay, when Bitcoin was being bought up very, very significantly. And all the way up to that all-time high that was hit up in December of 2017, we can see that Bitcoin was, increasing. And we actually, by the time that Bitcoin had reached its peak, it was, I think it was about 1,900 Bitcoin on exchanges at that point, okay? So interesting kind of information. So obviously where we are, we've kind of reached a point where there was a lot of Bitcoin on exchanges, and then it starts to come down, okay? And we are still decreasing. Now, obviously, as this looks really interesting, we get the idea that, this amount of Bitcoin on exchanges is incredibly low. Okay, it is not quite as low as it was when Bitcoin reached its all-time high, but it's still very, very low. So therefore, I think it's likely that we are going to see this significantly drop to the downside in the coming months as Bitcoin peaks up massively. And then we're going to start to see a reversal. And I think what we're actually going to look at is a bit of a plateau again, where we, instead of having very sharp increases and sharp decreases, we're going to be more kind of curvy, where Bitcoin will load up onto exchanges during key kind of bear market times and then obviously come down during bull runs and so forth, right? So right now, this is a really interesting report. It allows us to understand that Bitcoin on exchanges is actually decreasing, and specifically on the value of balances, but also on the inflows. If we take a look at the inflows, you can again and see how low this is in comparison to where things were back in 2017. Those were much higher than they are right now, right? And then obviously you back this up with data and reports that also show that 10% of Bitcoin is all that remains left to mine. Okay, so around 10% of the total supply of Bitcoin is left to be mined, and with the current supply reaching 18.9 million coins. The last Bitcoin will be mined more than a century from now. Okay, so it's interesting, and this basically is allowing us to understand that there isn't much Bitcoin left, and when it comes to inflows going onto exchanges, that is going to be significantly lowered over time as well. Okay, it gets harder and harder to mine. That what you are mining becomes lower and lower, and as a result, you're going to end up with an even scarce asset. And balances on exchanges will continue to decrease, in my opinion. And this is good for price discovery, which is why you see a lot of these influencers or relatively infamous people calling out some pretty high Bitcoin numbers in the future. I do think they are very, very possible based on the fact that there isn't going to be too much of this circulating around in the future. And people are speculating on that, where things are likely to go, okay, overall. So for Bitcoin right now, yes, there's some volatility here on the smaller time frames. If we're ever in doubt, we zoom out. The 4 hours looking pretty good. The 8 hours looking pretty good. The daily's looking pretty good. The weekly is looking fantastic, okay? Yes, there's pullbacks, but look, we haven't been in these kind of positions, or we have been in these positions multiple times over, and every time that we have been in an oversold position, like this, like this, like this, like this down here, for example, even these little blips in the middle here and here, what happened? Well, we've had a spike to the upside here. We had this huge spike to the upside here. We had this spike to the upside here. Right now, we're going to be looking for that spike to the upside. Guys, I'm going to leave the video there. If you have found this useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe? Tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With this said, done, and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.